believe you said you've written over 40 screenplays?
That's correct.
How long does it take to write one?
It just depends on what it's about, how long it is, what the format is. If I'm writing if I'm trying to write a good drama, I've definitely written some really good dramas in about 3 months, but that's not the end of the story. I'm still rewriting it and asking people for notes and trying to make sure that it can be the best script that it can be. So, I think I remember I wrote a script in about 3 months that people got really excited about. And then I spent, I believe a year in development with a production company with that particular script. So, and that was 2 years after the fact. So if you look at a lot of these scripts that get made, they're usually around for a long time, or a lot of them are around for a long time. So it really just depends. I remember I wrote a feature in 17 days once, but you can't, every script is going to be different, and the quality of the script is going to potentially be higher if you take a longer time to write it. And as long as you know what the principles are and you're getting good feedback on it. I recently wrote a pilot script. I'd been developing a pilot script for about 1 year, and I think that's one of the pilots that I'm the most proud of. So it really depends. It just kind of varies script to script.
How do you know an idea is one you want to turn into a story that you will commit several years to your life to?
I think you should turn your idea into a script if you can't put it down, or if you feel like that idea has to be in the marketplace, that it's so unique that you would have to do it and you have to share it with people. Because one, you're going to write it better and you're going to treat it with the amount of respect that it deserves, but also you're going to be better at selling that script to everybody else as well.
After you have an idea, how do you start writing the screenplay? What's your beginning process like?
It's definitely evolved over time. I think that I used to just jump right into it and start trying to write it, which is not the best way of doing it. I think that outlining it is the best way to do it, and making sure that nowadays what I do is I write everything on note cards, and then I start to place the note cards on my table and make sure that that is a good story. And what I'll do from there is I will either do a beat sheet or an outline, similar to what we would do in the writer's room. But I would create a beat sheet and then give it to my friends or give it to my readers and ask them what they think, get some feedback on that. And then also, if I can figure out things myself, then I'll add details to the beat sheet or add details to the cards as well. From there, I can kind of get into the details of an outline, which is a little bit more in depth. And then as long as everybody that I trust has signed off on the outline, then I finally write the script.
How many note cards would you say, once you actually start writing the script, are there on your desk?
That's a great question. I would say, as far as note cards, every note card is a scene. That's what I try to aim for, and as simple of a scene as possible. I would say maybe 30 note cards per pilot, and then if it's a feature film, maybe, that's a tough one. I would say about 50 note cards. And I just kind of keep looking at it and make sure that it's good and that it all makes sense.
What do you think about the saying, never write your story unless you know your ending?
Oh, that's a tough one too. That's a really good question. I think there's no hard and fast rules to writing. Anything that serves you and makes you more productive is probably the way to go. But famously, Francis Ford Coppola didn't know the ending of Apocalypse Now. And he wrote it, and I think it's one of the best endings of all time. I think he was maybe a little bit skeptical of that, but I think that you don't need to necessarily know the ending, but it definitely helps a lot to know the ending of your film.
Would you say you're a planner in life by nature?
Oh.
Or more spontaneous?
Let's see. I think in life, I like to try to plan things And in writing, I definitely like to try to plan things. And I do think having a plan helps your writing. And when it comes down to people that do it professionally, they definitely focus on coming up with a plan and changing it if it needs to be changed.
What's your process for creating characters?
When I create characters, I usually try to think of something that hasn't been done before. I mean, there's plenty of characters in every script for the last 2 decades or decade and a half where a suburban person starts to lead a life of crime and, to emulate Breaking Bad ultimately. I try to think of something that's never been done before or a genre with a twist that has never been seen before. So when I come up with a character, I usually want them to represent an idea, and then they either change their idea over time or they assert that idea over the course of the script. But I do think stories are about change. So a character needs to have a desire, or should have a desire, should have a flaw, and should kind of have a flawed philosophy as well. They can also have a core wound, so something in their past that makes them act in this flawed way. But I try to focus on what do they want and how are they going to get it.
You'd mentioned in a previous podcast that you love the film Ingrid Goes West.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Isn't that that's an amazing film? What kind of character arc do you see in the film?
Ingrid Goes West it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember she's this very sweet person who's just trying to fit in. And it's a satire about social media culture. But ultimately, Ingrid Goes West is a story about a woman who's trying to fit in, and she starts to kind of nestle her way into this life of this influencer in a very subtle way. And I just remember seeing a very relatable character that was drawn in by the hype of social media, and it really related to a lot of what I was experiencing and what I was seeing my generation kind of go through. And that's why, Ingrid Goes West does a lot of really amazing things really simply. But you also really, while she does some pretty crazy things and gets into some pretty crazy affairs, she's still this person who just wants to fit in at the end.
Right, yeah. I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it. It is a fantastic film. And there's a lot of sadness to it because she initially starts out because of a sad situation and she kind of globs onto this influencer that seems like she has the perfect life.
Yeah.
And treats that person almost like her higher power. And it's an amazing ride. Yeah, I highly recommend it. What's your ideal writing day?
Oh man, these are good questions. I think my ideal writing day is if I could just sit from maybe like noon to 7 and do nothing but write. That would be pretty ideal. Doesn't really happen too frequently, unfortunately. But I think that ideally I would, go for a walk, get some exercise, and then write the whole day and then call it a night. Have some nice food, have some, good lunch, whatever it might be, cook something at home, and then just spend the whole day writing. That would be pretty ideal. I don't think I could do more than 7 hours a day, although I used to try.
Do you think sometimes, though, the romance of being a writer when you have another job sounds great, sounds easy, but then if you were actually in those shoes where you're being paid to write, it's actually quite difficult?
I think there's a difference between writing for pay and writing on your own time. I think that writing for pay, you kind of realize that you can't really have writer's block because you're contractually obligated to deliver like a script ultimately, or whatever the writing format is. And writing on your own, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you're making a living. So I would say those are two completely separate things. And if you want to get caught in the romance of writing, go for it. Why not? It's totally fine. Like it's a very exciting process, especially when you're kind of discovering story elements and, really having a lot of fun with it. There's nothing wrong with that. But on the professional side, if you're writing on contract, you're dealing with deadlines. You're dealing with your well-being on the line. So that's also that's part of it as well.
Right. Yeah, it's just sometimes I think back to different times in my life where if I just had this open-ended time, I would be doing A, B, C, and D. And then when you find that you actually do get to that point, you find all these excuses not to do things. And it can be very hard to be your own taskmaster.
Yeah.
It is very difficult.
I think when I was younger, I was definitely in like we gotta hustle, we gotta write it all, and we have to work so hard and just grind it all out. And during COVID, I think that changed when I realized that, okay, health is the most important thing. Who knows if movies are going to get made for a little while. And I started to focus a little bit more on my well-being and my health than when I was younger. And it was just kind of go, 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 get a bunch of stuff done, write as many pages as you can, like keep getting it out there. Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately you're trying to, either staff on a show, or sell your movie or sell your script, and have it produced. So as long as you're moving towards those things, or for me, if I'm moving towards those things, then I know I'm on the right track.
Thinking back to character, what is an established character that you wish you had written? Perfect flaws, perfect arc?
I think I'm really in love with Shogun right now, and I really like the character Toranaga. And he's just so smart in everything that he does. And I'm also in love with that wardrobe as well, which, may or may not, is not necessarily a character thing. But I'm just I love those kind of historical pieces. And he was such an interesting character that I got drawn into.